I mean, it's Looney Tunes. The president's literally coming to Georgia to campaign for the same two senators that his two former lawyers who are filing lawsuits to contest the election with the same claims the president made in his very long 46-minute video yesterday that have already been debunked. I'm speechless. That's the best I got right now.
Good morning and welcome to the final edition of AM Joy. I'm Jason Johnson. With all due respect, the comparison to Looney Tunes is not exactly fair. Bugs Bunny was a lot more clever than Donald Trump because it was the president's delusion that was on full display at his rally on Saturday night in Georgia, which was supposed to be a campaign event for the two incumbent Republicans fighting to keep their Senate seats and with it control the Senate in Republican hands. But it was really just a venue for Trump to air his many petty grievances. It was Festivus in Georgia, debunk conspiracy theories and baseless fraud allegations. Case in point.
You know, we won Georgia, just so you understand. We've never lost an election. We're winning this election.
He also took aim at Georgia's top elected officials who are also Republicans.
You got to make sure your Secretary of State knows what the hell he's doing, and you got to make sure your governor gets a lot tougher than he's been. Your governor could stop it very easily if he knew what the hell he was doing.
As the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported, this rally came just hours after Trump called Kemp to demand that Kemp call a special session of the state legislature to overturn the election results, which Kemp refused. I guess he was used to calling him on his cell phone when he needed a vote. Joining me now is Christina Greer, politics editor for The Grio, Kurt Bardella, senior advisor for the Lincoln Project and former spokesperson for the House Oversight Committee, Latasha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, and Marcus Farrell, former chief of staff for the New Georgia Project. I'm going to start with you, Kurt, because you are a country music fan, okay? We're going to go Charlie Daniels here. Trump bowed his head because he knew that he'd been beat. And he took that golden crown of his and laid it at John Ossoff's feet. And John said, Trump, come on back if you ever want to try again. But I told you once, you son of a gun, I'm the best that's ever been. I'm looking at these poll numbers right now. Thank you. See, I knew you'd appreciate that. I knew you'd appreciate that.
That was impressive, Jason. Wow, I'm blown away.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, I'm looking at these recent poll numbers that we've got with the Ossoff race against Perdue, and we've got Reverend Warnock against Loeffler. These look like pretty good numbers for a runoff election in a state that just turned blue about a month ago. Do you think that anything Trump is really going to do right now will have an impact on how this race is playing out?
I think, Jason, at this point, the only effect that Trump could have on this race is a negative one for Republicans. By continuing to assail Republican elected officials in Georgia, like the governor and secretary of state, by continuing to promote these baseless conspiracy theories in an effort to really perpetrate a coup d'etat in America, he is basically telling voters in Georgia the election system that he wants them to participate in is one that they can't trust. This can only have a depressing turnout for Republicans in Georgia. I think that realistically looking at special elections where turnout is everything, people are not conditioned to show up and vote on January 5th in Georgia. This is about getting your side to turn out in the most robust numbers as possible. That can be the difference between winning and losing. And right now, Republicans in Georgia are getting very mixed messages in an event that's supposed to be only about getting Perdue and Loeffler elected in January 5th. Trump spent the entire time, not that this is shocking, talking about himself, talking about his delusions and conspiracy theories and grievances, and that does nothing to help David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. They're being put in an untenable position where they have to choose between our democracy and a wannabe dictator, and none of those answers for them are going to be helpful in trying to get their base to show up and vote.
Dr. Greer, if you had asked me to go through my Georgia runoff election bingo card, my pillow guy would not be on it. And yet, he's here in Georgia talking about crazy conspiracy theories of what the Republicans' actual plans are. I want to show this video and then you get your comment on the other side. Do we have the video? Okay, I guess we don't have the My Pillow video guy. So essentially, Dr. Greer, what you have is a lot of people down there in Georgia saying, hey, look, this is fake, this is nonsense, we can't understand how this election is going to work, don't vote. Do you think that that's something that is just part of the anger and the noise at the time? Or do you think that local people are really seeking this guidance and choosing to not participate in an election that's important?
Well, we've said all along, Jason, you know, the Republican Party has turned into a cult-like scenario. So when Donald Trump tells people not to vote, certain people won't vote. And I think what's inspirational for the Democrats, and they have to sort of stay the course, is that the organizing in Georgia for the Democrats, for progressive politics, for black people, didn't start after November 3rd. It's been going on for several years. Fair Fight, New Georgia Project, Black Voters Matter. There are many organizations that have been working diligently for years, actually, to make sure residents in Georgia understand what's at stake, not just on the federal level and not just with the president and Congress, but the local, state, and federal level politics and how it interacts in their lives. So when we have the president abusing the governor, Republican governor, and the Secretary of State, but we also have Republicans saying, I will not steal this election for you. And what you're saying, your rhetoric, is actually quite dangerous. And it's putting us in danger. We've seen, you know, when Democrats are unhappy, they knit pink hats and go marching. When Republicans are unhappy, they grab AR-15s and start storming the Bastille and knocking on the doors of the State House. So I think we're reaching a critical point where the Republican Party in Georgia is going to have to separate itself from the president at a certain point in time. Sadly, with that last rally, there will likely be many residents of Georgia who are quite ill because there were very few masks at the president's last super spreader event.
Dr. Greer makes a really good point because, look, I, for one, am sick of giving Republican officials credit for complaining now about the monster that they've created over the last 4 or 5 years. You've got Gabe Sterling out there saying, oh, my gosh, this violence is so terrible, while still perpetuating the lie that Stacey Abrams never conceded her race. And then you've got a full investigation into several organizations that Stacey Abrams started, the New Georgia Project, et cetera, being conducted right now by Brian Kemp. Marcus, as somebody who was a part of these organizations and did this kind of organizing in Georgia, what do you think about the fact that Republicans are saying it's a rigged system while at the same time investigating organizations that are dedicated to actually getting people involved in voting?
It's not surprising that I say it's hypocrisy. And also, I just wanted to touch back on a former point. You have to be a special hot mess to make Republicans depress their turnout in January 5th, like in January on a special election. And that is exactly what's happening right now. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, driving up 85, and I saw a billboard that actually said, since Donald Trump, since Kelly Loeffler and Purdue does not support Donald Trump, we should not support him. We should not support them. Yeah, and that's a real billboard that's going on. So, I mean, listen, the hard work that was made by these organizations on the ground, Black Lives Matter, Black Voters Matter, New Georgia Project, Fair Fight, ACLU just for protecting the law, and Black Male Voter Project, all these organizations that are down here on the ground that are working and have been working for the past few years. You match that with the amount of ineptitude and hot messness that is the Republican Party's campaign for Senate here in Georgia, and we might actually see a win, and that is the most amazing thing to me.
You know what? The political science term of hot messness, I will make sure that I and Dr. Greer use that in future classes. Latasha, so I want to get into some hardcore numbers here. Usually what we've seen in the past for runoff elections, right, is that there's a drop anywhere from 20 to 30, 40-something%. What does the turnout what does the drop-off rate have to be for Democrats to still be successful? Can it only be 15% from the general election in November? Can it only be 20? What do you guys have to see in order for this to be successful for Ossoff and Warnock?
We are operating as if it can be zero drop-off rate. We're in a state that has been known for suppression. So we can't leave at anything at chance. We can't leave anything on the table. And so for us, our goal is to turn out at the same levels. Now, we know that is an uphill battle, but at the end of the day, we are in a state that when we are talking about, while Trump is talking about voter fraud, there's no evidence of voter fraud, but there's a preponderance of evidence that there has been voter suppression. And so because of that, we're not taking anything for granted. We're not leaving any stone unturned. It's really important in this election cycle that while these two seats are really critical for the nation, right, for the Democratic Party, they're most for people here in Georgia.
So, Marcus, what was that, Latasha?
I said we can't take any chances. We're trying to get it all.
Okay, what if I heard the police cars in the background. I couldn't quite tell. Marcus, I wanted to ask you this because this is also something that I've seen, and it's been a concern when I've talked to people in Georgia. You have great organizers on the ground. You have Latasha. You have Black Votes Matters. You have the Black Male Voting Project. But there's always this influx, right, of out-of-state consultants who have free time because their campaigns failed last November, who suddenly start telling candidates what to do. What do the Democratic candidates right now, what do Ossoff and Warnock have to be careful of when it comes to those outside voices suddenly flooding the state for the runoff in January?
It's interesting that you said that, Jason. After the general election was over, there was more white consultants from D.C. that came down here than PlayStation 5s. So at this point, what I'm thinking is these campaigns need to just listen to the people on the ground. And, I mean, here's one thing that you have to understand. Folks come into town wanting to take over narratives instead of trying to win an election, and that's a problem. So you can't take the same Iowa tactics that didn't work for you in Iowa and try to implement them with black voters. You got to listen to the aunties, the uncles on the street. Because if you mess around and start doing work on your own outside of the parameter of the people who've been here and doing the work for years, you're going to start running Iowa commercials. You're going to start turning down and suppressing a vote that obviously, as Latasha said, we need to leave every single stone unturned. But you can just make one commercial or make one bad phone call or make one bad decision politically, and all of a sudden a whole neighborhood hates Ossoff and Warnock because you don't know what the hell you're doing.
That's right. I mean, Jason, even just a point, I just want to add that you can say y'all the wrong way in a commercial, and we know that you're not from the area. I think what is really important in this election cycle, too, is that what we're seeing is we're also seeing the closure of early voting sites. And that's something that we're paying very, very close attention to, that we're really analyzing, are these early voting sites in places where you saw Democratic votes? So I think that we've got to keep all eyes on Georgia, literally.
And keep those eyes focused on what actually matters. So, Kurt, I want to put this to you. Put on your Republican hat for half a second, right? They've got this giant fight, this oophagy going on, this circular firing squad. They're all beating on each other. What on earth is the message that Republicans need to come up with in the middle of this infighting? You know, you've got Trump attacking Kemp over Twitter. You've got Gabe Sterling saying this. You've got Loeffler and Perdue saying that. Can they come up with a coherent message out of this, or are they just going to try and depend on turnout?
I think that Republicans at this point, they're going to have to depend on turnout. There is no cohesive message. And one thing that we've learned over the last 4 years is nothing that Republicans can say or do can be louder than what we're hearing from Donald Trump. And the one thing that we have seen since the election is that Donald Trump is determined to be as loud as he possibly can from now until January 20th. That there is no shutting him up. There is no he's going to go away or he's going to retreat and withdraw into the background. As we saw last night in Georgia, he is determined, as always, to make everything about himself because that's the only mode that he knows is 100% self-promotion. So for Republicans in Georgia, their only hope is that everybody just shows up to vote because that's what Republicans do. Republicans often rely on the fact that behaviorally, Republicans show up to vote. No matter what the condition is, no matter when the election is, no matter who's on the ballot, Republicans vote for Republicans. They don't have the same turmoil that you oftentimes see on the Democratic side. Even if they think that the candidate isn't their ideal person, they will still vote for that person, as we saw with the robust numbers, higher numbers than we expected from Republicans in this most recent election. So Republicans aren't going to have a message other than what we've continually seen, and there's no getting louder than Donald Trump, so they're just going to have to try to make the best of it.
Dr. Greer, very quickly. So, look, Trump is not on the ballot, but Kelly Loeffler is, and she is going to be debating Raphael Warnock tonight. I'm pretty skeptical as to whether debates really make a difference in an election. Do you think tonight, if there's some huge blunder on either side, from Warnock or Loeffler, that could end up affecting turnout, or do you think it's just going to be caught up in the overall morass of this campaign?
I agree with you, Jason. Debates tend not to move the needle too much. They are really great, though, with fundraising. And so as we go into this final push, I think if Warnock behaves the way he has been, sort of very strong, very steady, very clear in his messaging, I think that'll help with fundraising so then they can work on turnout and galvanizing Democrats in the entire state of Georgia, not just the Atlanta area. With Kelly Loeffler, though, I do think that there might be some good sound bites that Warnock's able to extract from her, largely because of some of the corruption scandals and the insider trading allegations that she's facing right now.
I think if Warnock makes a little drop motion like he did in his last commercial, he'll probably win the entire debate. Christina will be back in our next hour. Thank you, Kurt Bardella, Latasha Brown, and Marcus Farrell. Coming up, the challenges of convincing 350 million Americans to get vaccinated.